fragrance of perfume and a beautiful fragrance. And this comes from Hadith. Anas radiallahu anhu himself says this, that hair would not become white. And there's reports as well, again for this as well. وألقى شقي القوم فرث جزورهم على ظهره والله ليس بعازب فألقوا ببدر في قليب مخبث وعم جميع القوم شؤم المداعب. And the most wretched of people. Now, the author is mentioning an instance from the seerah, which is that the most wretched of people had casted the, excrement, or farth means referring to the filth of a slaughtered animal, over the blessed back of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Allah Azza wa Jal was watching everything. This is referring to a narration mentioned by Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, within which in Makkah Mukarramah, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was praying in front of the Kaaba, and some of the kuffar, the known enemies of the kuffar of Makkah, like Abu Jahl, Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayth, and others, were together, and they were discussing different things until one of them said that who would take the intestines of a camel, and of this newly slaughtered camel, and put it on the back of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he's in sajda. And so they went and they did this very wretched action. And then Fatima radiallahu anha, happened to come by or know of this. So she came and removed this from the head and the back of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and gave him water to cleanse himself. Another narration says that she was emotional at that moment, and at that moment Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to her that, "Don't be emotional, my daughter, for surely my deen will spread to the east and the west, and fi kulli bayti madarin wa wabarin, that every house made from any type of material that it is made from, Iman will enter that house." So this is referring to that narration, that Shaqiyul Qawm, a very wretched person, the narrations say Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayth, who then the poet also then says that all of these people were thrown into a very terrible and accursed pit, as it comes in the narration that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that I was shown the exact place where Fulan will die, and Abu Jahl will die, and Fulan will die, and Fulan will die. And they died in those exact places, Abdullah bin Mas'ud radhiyallahu anhu says. And these were the same people that did these type of very, very immature and very, very terrible things to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so when they were killed, then their bodies were gathered together and thrown into a pit. And so the punishment of what they have done had consumed all of these people. وأخبر عن أن أعطاه مولاه نصرة ورعبا إلى شهر مسيرة سارب. And the Messenger of Allah ﷺ informed us that his Lord bestowed upon him the divine help, divine assistance, and that this divine assistance, it manifested in, as it comes in hadith, that nusirtu bir ru'b, Rasulullah says that I was given aid with that Allah Azza wa Jal would place in the hearts of the enemies. He would place the fear and awe of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that many times, it's reported, even narrations, that some of the Sahaba said that some of the kuffar in the battles would say, "Are you seeing 50 people or 100 people?" when there was only 5 people standing in front of them. And so Allah Azza wa Jal gave this miraculous help to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his Sahaba, that he gives the analogy of, when a person sees a camel from very, very far away, very long distance away, from that very far distance, anyone who wanted to try to harm Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or his people, they would feel fear from that moment, from much far. Right? Allah Azza wa Jalla would place that fear in their heart. فأوفاه وعد النصر والرعب عاجلا وأعطى له فتح التبوك ومارب. And Allah Azza wa Jal fulfilled in His promise and made and gave him the assistance and awe, and bestowed upon him the victories of Tabuk and Ma'arib. وأخبر عنه أن سيبلغ ملكه إلى ما أرى من مشرق ومغارب. And Allah Azza wa Jal informed Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that his his deen, his dominion, right, that it will reach the extent of the whatever appears from the east and the west. And this is true. We know that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his deen spread very quickly on the hands of the khulafa after him. And the Lord of the earth showered victory. فَأَسْبَلَ رَبُّ الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ نَبِيِّهِ فُتُوحًا تَوَارَى مَا لَهَا مِنْ مَنَاكِبِ. That the Lord of the earth showered victories, right, after Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam upon the khulafa, upon the Sahaba. Such victories that the boundaries of such victories, would have no boundaries. The ends of these victories, where these victories spread, had no boundaries. Right? It's a very beautiful description, the way he says it. وَكَلَّمَهُ الْأَحْجَارُ وَالْعُجْمُ وَالْحَصَى وَتَكْلِيمُ هَذَا النَّوْعِ لَيْسَ بِرَاتِبِ. And the pebbles and those things which could not speak, and the rocks spoke to him, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And I mentioned before that there are sahih narrations regarding this. For example, one narration within which Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that verily before Nubuwwah there was a rock in Mecca that used to give salam to me, and verily I still know where that rock is right now. Even though this is something that is uncommon and never happens. Right? وحن له الجذع القديم تحزنا فإن فراق الحب أدهى المصائب. And now the author is mentioning another instance that the withered old stump cried and yearned out of grief for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, for verily the separation of love is the most painful of calamities. He's referring to that in Medina Munawwara, when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to give khutbah in the beginning, there was a tree stump that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would stand upon, and he would give his khutbah. This was before the mimbar was created, a 3-step mimbar. And when the 3-step mimbar was created, the tree stump was placed aside. And when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was giving khutbah, while giving khutbah, the Sahaba, and this is why this hadith of the crying tree stump is one of the mutawatir ahadith. Mutawatir ahadith are those ahadith which have been narrated by many Sahaba, to then many tabi'een, then to then many followers after them as well. And each, generation of narrators are great in number. That's a general example and explanation of what mutawatir hadith is. So this hadith is one of the ahadith which has the most narrators. That this tree stump started to cry. Why? Because everyone was there at Jum'ah to see it. So all the Sahaba that were there, they're narrating it now. And so this tree stump started to cry, and everyone is hearing and looking, where is this cry coming from? Until Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam leaves the mimbar and goes and he puts his hand on this tree stump. as if he's consoling the tree stump. And the hadith says, he says, if I did not console the tree stump, if I did not stop it from crying, then by Allah, this tree stump would continue to cry till the day of Qiyamah. Right? So this is a very beautiful instance of something. There's another poem that mentions this instance in a very beautiful manner. The poet says, وَأَلْقَى حَتَّى فِي الْجَمَادَاتِ حُبَّهُ فَكَانَتْ لِإِهْدَاءِ السَّلَامِ لَهُ تُهْدَى وفارق جذعا كان يخطب عنده فأن أنين الأم إذ تجد الفقد يحن إليه الجذع يا قوم هكذا أما نحن أولى أن نحن له وجدا إذا كان جذع لم يطق بعد ساعة فليس وفاء أن نطيق له بعدا. Very beautiful poem that basically he's referencing the same instance, that the love of Rasulullah ﷺ was placed even in the non-living objects, things that have no life. And those things gave salam to Rasulullah out of love. And when Rasulullah separated from that tree stump that was, he would give khutbah by, then it yearned like, a mother, when this mother, loses its child. It had this yearning. And he says, "O people, if a tree stump is yearning, for Rasulullah to this degree, then are we as people not more rightful that we should be yearning emotionally towards Rasulullah? And if such a tree stump could not bear being distant from Rasulullah for even 1 hour, then what type of wafa, what type of loyalty is it that we're able to bear being very distant from him? Right? How can we bear distance from him? Right? So it's a very beautiful a lesson in this. And then the poet continues to go on, and he says, and وَأَعْجَبُ تِلْكَ الْبَدْرِ يَنْشَقُّ عِنْدَهُ وَمَا هُوَ فِي إِعْجَازِهِ مِنْ عَجَائِبِ, that one of the strange miracles or great marvelous miracles of Rasulullah is when the full moon split by his gesture, as it comes in hadith by Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, that once Rasulullah pointed to the moon and the moon split. And the poet says that, in comparison to the many other miracles, and this is not the greatest miracle, and we know that. وَشَقَّ لَهُ جِبْرِيلُ بَاطِنَ صَدْرِهِ لِغُسْلِ سَوَادٍ بِالسُّوَيْدَاءِ إِلَى زِبِ. And Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, this is also miraculous and a miracle of his life, of Rasulullah's life, that Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam split open his chest, right, and cleaned it out. As the narrations mention, up to 3 times this happened in the life of Rasulullah. And there are different instances of this when it is mentioned. But up to 3 times can be gathered for the most part that this occurred. And that Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, cleaned the internal reality of Rasulullah sallallahu. And this shows the tawajjuh, the care that Allah Azza wa Jal has of Rasulullah sallallahu, that to make sure that his heart is purely clean. And this is his maqam. And this is a very difficult thing to bear. But Rasulullah's strength was that he was able to bear this. وَأَسْرَى عَلَى مَتْنِ الْبُرَاقِ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ فَيَا خَيْرَ مَرْكُوبٍ وَيَا خَيْرَ رَاكِبٍ. That, and the Prophet of Allah, Rasulullah, he took to the heavens on the back of the buraq. And what a fortunate mount, meaning what a fortunate animal which is being ridden, and what a fortunate rider, right? That this is the animal, this is the ride which, according to some narrations, other Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam had sat on. And this is now the ride which the greatest of the Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam is riding. وشاهد أرواح النبيين جملة لدى الصخرة العظمى وفوق الكواكب. And the Prophet of Allah beheld all the souls of the prophets at the great rock, referring to Masjid al-Sakhra, that Rasulullah ﷺ, he witnessed in that Al-Ard al-Muqaddasa, in that very blessed land, uh, the presence of all the Anbiya alayhimu salatu wasalam. And this story is known of the Isra, that when Rasulullah ﷺ was there, the souls of the Anbiya alayhimu salatu wasalam were gathered. Right? And that's why the poet mentions Arwah al-Nabiyyin, the souls of the Anbiya alayhimu salatu wasalam, that they were made present there by Allah Azza wa Jal, and that Rasulullah ﷺ then led them in salah over there, as the narrations mention. And then Rasulullah ﷺ went upon the miracle of the Mi'raj, which is that وَشَاهَدَ فَوْقَ الْفَوْقِ أَنْوَارَ رَبِّهِ كَمِثْلِ فَرَاشٍ وَافِرٍ مُتَرَاكِبٍ, that Rasulullah ﷺ witnessed the lights of his Lord above and beyond. Rasulullah ﷺ witnessed the, as Allah Azza wa Jalla says in Surah Al-Isra, as well as in Surah Al-Najm, that we showed him our signs, Ayatun al-Kubra. Right? We showed him our signs. Right? And he saw our signs. And that مَا زَاغَ الْبَصَرُ وَمَا طَغَى, that, his vision was very well able to see. Allah Azza wa Jalla gave the capacity to Rasulullah to see and absorb everything from the unseen that Rasulullah was experiencing and was seeing. Every single thing was absorbed, and Rasulullah was learning from that. Now the author goes in to talk about the miracle of the Quran. And so he says, وَرَاعَتْ بَلِيغُ الْآيِ كُلَّ مُتَجَادِلٍ خَصِيمٍ تَمَادَى فِي مُرَاءِ الْمُطَالِبِ براعة أسلوب وعز معارض بلاغة أقوال وأخبار غائب. That the eloquent verses of the Quran, it was overwhelming to any opposing, person. As we know, at that time, the Arab, their literary skills were unlike any other, and perhaps no one ever after them had the literary skills that they had. And so the literary skills that they had were so eloquent, so skilled. But even for such people, they could not, stand forward in front of the Quran and challenge the Quran. As many ayat of the Quran mention this, that bring one ayah similar to the Quran, bring 10 ayahs similar to the Quran, bring one surah similar to the Quran. It has an astounding, style. Right? Bara'atu usloob, وَعِزُّ مُعَارِضٍ, and that no person opposing it, right, could actually properly oppose the Quran. Any person who opposes it fails. The eloquence of its statements, and that it informs of the unseen. That the Quran informs of that which no other book, no other person can inform of, which is the knowledge of the unseen. وَسَمَّاهُ رَبُّ الْعَرْشِ أَسْمَاءَ مَدْحِهِ تُبَيِّنُ مَا أَعْطَى لَهُ مِنْ مَنَاقِبِ رؤوف رحيم أحمد ومحمد مقفا ومفضال يسمى بعاقب. Allah Azza wa Jal gave Rasulullah sallallahu praiseworthy names that would reveal the lofty status that Allah Azza wa Jal has bestowed upon him. Ra'ufun Rahimun. These are names that Allah Azza wa Jal has given to Rasulullah sallallahu in the Quran. When Allah Azza wa Jal said that a prophet has come to you, Azizun alayhi ma'anittum, harisun alaykum bil mu'minina ra'ufur rahim. That when you are stubborn in not following his way, this is very difficult for him, because he wants you to be guided. Harisun alaykum, he has much desire that you follow the guidance. Bil mu'minina ra'ufur rahim, And with the believers, He is Ra'uf, He is kind, Rahim, merciful. Right? We know that Ra'uf and Rahim are the names of Allah Azza wa Jal as well. Although, of course, in the haqq of Allah Azza wa Jal, they manifest differently. And in the haqq of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they manifest differently. But Allah Azza wa Jal has said He is bil mu'minina Ra'ufur Rahim, to the believers, kind and merciful. Ahmadu, the greatest person to ever worship Allah Azza wa Jal, Ahmad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is what Ahmad means. The greatest person to ever praise Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in dunya and in akhirah is him Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Muhammad, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this name has many different ways it can be explained, but one is that a being created to be praised. A being created to be praised. So Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and Muqaffa and Mifdal yusamma bi'aqibi. Mifdal is not a name of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but it's referring to, pointing to another name, which is Nabiur Rahma. In a hadith, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that I have many names. There are different ahadith which mention this, that I have many names. It's in the Sahihain and other books of hadith as well, that I have many names. And he says that I am Muhammad, I am Ahmad, I am Mahi, yimhullahu bi al-kufra. I am Mahi means, that thing which erases. Allah will, through me, erase kufr. Wa ana al-hashir, yuhsharu alladhi yuhsharu bi. I am the hashir, the first to be resurrected, and everyone after me will be resurrected. And aqib, that there is no Nabi to come after me. There is no Nabi to come after me. And so Muqaffa, Muqaffa also means, that the prophet that came after all of the other prophets, right? As it وَقَفَّيْنَا عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمْ, right? Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran that we followed the prophets with other prophets, right? And so Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam followed all of the prophets, came after them. So he's Muqaffa. And Mifdal refers to the Nabi of mercy, or another narration also says, Ana Nabiyyu Tawbah. I am the prophet of forgiveness. Tawbah can also mean forgiveness, not necessarily repentance. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a means for people to do Tawbah and to receive the forgiveness of Allah Azza wa Jal. And Aqib, a prophet that no other prophet comes after. So with that, we complete this chapter. The point of kind of going through this poem was only to, number one, take a little break and go into another discussion. Inshallah, hopefully you enjoyed it. Number two, it kind of highlights that some things, if you were following along through the weeks, that the study of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was systematically approached by the ulama, by the scholars. And the ulama have, discussed the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in many, many different unique ways. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is discussed, and prophethood is discussed in chapters of Aqidah. Like many chapters of, or discussions of Aqidah came in here as well. Right? Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is discussed from the angle of fiqh. That was also mentioned in here regarding the Sharia that he brought. Right? Why do we believe in Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? Each chapter pointed to the evidence of prophethood and different forms of evidence, which is very brilliant of the author. Right? Because it's not just, although there's one, you could say one primary type of discourse that the ulama take in proving the prophethood of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there are many various angles by which the Dalailun Nubuwah, the evidences of the prophethood of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, are established. And beyond all of that, that this should bestow in our hearts the love of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which is from Iman. Right? As it comes in hadith, that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من ولده ووالده والناس أجمعين. That one of you cannot ever believe, meaning your belief cannot be complete. Your belief will not be complete until I am more beloved to him than his parents, his children, and all of people. Right? So, and as you maybe are aware that daily after Isha al-Fajr as well, we're reading from a very important book, which is in our history, a very important book of Islam, and the scholars did a lot of paid attention to, which is the Ashifa, right, في تعريف حقوق المصطفى of Qadi Iyad rahimahullah, which also discusses what is it that we need to know about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? What do we need to know about him? Right? You know everything about your deen. How? Through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You must know about him. You must study him. As the ulama mentioned in various different poems in different places, that you know because of the wahi that Allah Azza wa Jal bestowed upon him, because of the discipline that Allah Azza wa Jal bestowed upon him, you can never truly come to a conclusion of discussing his virtue. Right? So he is the measure of what it means to be good. He is the measure which explains what is righteousness, what is goodness, what is uprightness, what is taqwa. By learning about him, by analyzing his akhlaq, by analyzing his life, his seerah, you have guidance in this life. Otherwise you will not be guided. Right? Guidance comes through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Allah Azza wa Jal bestows hidayah, and Allah Azza wa Jal bestowed hidayah to this ummah through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you must go through the door of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to gain that guidance. Right? No person can be a person of Islam, we know this, except that they have to believe. You have to believe that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger and the last of messengers. Right? So this is very important. Hopefully this will at least inshallah encourage us to study the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his seerah, right? Read it in some form or manner, listen to lectures about him, and learn about these things. A lot of times when we talk about his akhlaq, we think that it's just something very righteous and high that we talk about. But our deen is the deen of khuluq, is the deen of akhlaq, and we only know about that deen of akhlaq, we only know about that akhlaq because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the manifestation of akhlaq. Allah Azza wa Jalla, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. He is the manifest. You want to know about what it means to be a human being? He is the only way you can know that. You have to study him. You have to know about him. You have to love him. You have to give your life to studying him. And this is why the ulama give their lives to studying the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is also something very important. Sometimes there are these ideas, unfortunately, that the hadith is not that necessarily accurate. And that's an entire topic of its own. But hadith is not accurate. The science of hadith is just hearsay. This is a very, very destructive opinion to a person's deen. People that don't believe that hadith has been protected, right? This is destructive to a person's deen. Because the same method by which hadith was preserved was the same method that Quran was preserved. So if you open the door towards what's called shak, doubt in hadith, you've opened the door towards shak in Quran as well. Doubt in Quran as well. And so this is another subject within itself of hujjatul hadith, hujjiyatul hadith. This is another subject within itself as well, which is the authenticity of hadith, the legitimacy of hadith, and why, not only historically, but what are the logical systems that have been placed. Today, what is the measurement of authenticity in things in life? Science, scientific method. What was the method by which the ulama of Islam had innovated, had created to authenticate their deen? There's a whole system. Don't think it's just hearsay. No, it takes years to understand it and years to study it and to learn it. And then ulama come into this field and they specialize in this field, and this is all they do. That why is hadith preserved? How is it preserved? And then on top of that, the blessing. The ulama, that they gain the blessing of, just giving your entire life of reading Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. When everyone is busy with talking about what other people have said, or busy what's on the news, or busy what's here and there, that the people of hadith close their eyes and they're merely only paying attention to what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, because that's the only saying that will get you through life, right? The only saying that will actually benefit you in this life is the saying of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the ittiba' of his sunnah. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us tawfiq to learn more about him as well and follow him and bring his life into our ways so that we can be examples for ourselves and other people as well. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحان الله بحمده سبحانك وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك اللهم ونتوب إليك جزاكم الله خيرا السلام عليكم